Hello, welcome back to Arise.Works. This is Attributes and VOPs workshop in Houdini, and this is episode 6, where we will discuss how to create, delete, promote parameters, get parameters from a map. So yeah, let's get started. As per usual, we drop the geometry nodes, and I'll create a grid. Let's say 50 by 50 this time around. And let's say we want to create an attribute. So obviously there is a node that calls attribute create, right? So as you can see, we can write the attribute here. Let's for the sake of this, let's say we create an attribute called n, which stands for normal. By the way, a VOP. If you don't remember the default attributes that come, these are these ones, right? These attributes that come predefined, you cannot really change them. So this time around, if we middle mouse, we have only 1 point attribute, as you can see. And now we have 2 point attributes. However, normal is just a float, but it has to be actually a vector. And if we enable showing the normals, I guess these ones, we will see that we have to write the normals so they actually work. So what I did is I created an attribute which are normals, and they are 0, 1, 0, which means they face upwards. Usually you would create normal attribute by just placing the normal, and this will create vertex attributes, as you can see, because previously we just created the point normals. But this doesn't really matter to our case, because we wanted just to see how to actually create an attribute. So now that we have the attribute in our geometry, we can let's see. Actually, you know what? Let's create a squab. And we will see that in the squab, we have a lot of different attributes. And interestingly enough, a UV, as you might have already have guessed, is just an attribute as well. So UV is just an attribute on vertices that's 2D maps the texture on a 3D geometry. So if you previously have made the UVs, you can already think about it as an attribute that you can manipulate. And actually you can manipulate UVs, for example, with I don't know, UV transform, right? You can scale up and down, but you know, it will obviously look broken because it's mapped correctly as it is. But what it does is just moves around the values of the UV attribute. So let's say that if we press spacebar 5, we can see the UV layout. But if we attribute delete, the vertex attributes UV, you will see that we now do not have attributes any whatsoever, right? So if we middle click, you can see we don't have now UV attribute. Now, I'm not saying that you should delete your UVs, but this is just one of the cases where you can just get rid of unnecessary attributes. For example, if you want to import your geometry into another UVing software, or make it auto UV like in Substance Painter, and in previous versions it could not actually decide whether UVs are present or not. So if you're using the previous version of Substance Painter, you can delete the UVs just like that. And it will delete not just from one instance of the geometry, it will delete throughout the whole geometry. So for example, in Blender, you would have to actually select different geometry containers and delete the UVs one by one. So this is, for example, if you have exports from CAD software like Rhino, Fusion, or whatever else, sometimes they auto-generate UVs, and for example, you have like 500 pieces in Blender. Deleting 500 UVs would be just a lot of manual work, and here it's automatic. Well, not technically automatic. It's just a matter of one node. Okay. Next up, let's say we create attribute from a map. Okay. So again, we will get our grid, but this time around, let's say 250 by 250. Whoops, 250 by 250. And let's see what we have. We have a little, a really dense, grid this time around, and we can attribute from map. And as you can see, something already is happening, right? So, by the way, you can get into the image settings, invert the U, invert the V, and make it like behave. Make your image more aligned with your geometry if something goes terribly wrong. So in this case, I think we'll go to my home folder and we will just take one of the images that I have been making for the YouTube thumbnails actually. And as you can see, this is the picture of those sparks that we created in the previous video. And they have been automatically mapped to the grid. So it's kind of actually just written the CD into our p-values. So as you might have already thought, obviously we can go into attribute VOP now. And we can indeed, if you remember what we have done previously, we were creating floats from vectors, and this time around VTF again, vector to floats, then back again, FTV, float to vector. I will just move around the y-axis of our P. So what we're gonna have now is we're gonna add the color, right? Again, vector to floats, CD. Let's just add the, so since we have like the white color, it means white is 111, so it doesn't really matter which particular color we add to our Y. Anyway, so this is nothing new. We just move around our points by some amount. Actually, to kind of like make it a little bit better, we can multiply it by a constant, and we can then control the amount of, you know, how much points are getting moved around. Now, if we wanted, we talked about this a little bit. If we wanted, for example, to actually extrude this amount, the extrusion will not work. Let's say pull extrude. And whoops, let me get back. We will disable the actual displacement, and let's say pull extrude individual elements, distance a little bit more. Inset, maybe nothing. I'll drop a null just so it doesn't look like everything is green. So anyway, if we go to local control and create the distance scale CD, as previously mentioned, it will not work because poly extrude, it works on primitives or faces or just polygons, whatever you want to call them. And this attribute, it runs over points. And this attribute was created for points. So what we're going to do, we will attribute promote, which will convert our CD, if we write it from points to primitive, and immediately you see the result. Finally, it works. So basically what we are having right now is that if you have an attribute that does not work, and you know that, for example, if you had like attributes that actually was, for example, on primitives this time around, and you wanted to just move around and displace along normals, you would have to convert it to point attribute first to make it work. So anyway, this thing works for us. Yeah, So, and you can overwrite your attributes, or you just through attributes creates. Through attribute create, you can actually just overwrite your attributes. As you can see, I inputted the CD, and immediately we see that our new, it's not that we created attribute, it's just we have overwritten attribute with our new values. It's actually going to be vector as well. And there you go. So if you just create new attributes and you write it, it will overwrite previously the attribute that you previously had, and it will just, you know, evaluate it as if there was no attribute before. So hopefully this makes sense, right? So again, previously we had attributes, and then just by again creating attribute with the same name, we sort of like overwritten attribute, even if it wasn't, as if it wasn't there. As a final thing, I want to show you how to create or indeed write attributes in another way, right? So not just, not let's say by promoting attributes from somewhere to somewhere else, but actually writing them in attribute VOPs. So again, let's drop another attribute VOP. Let's go inside. This time around, again, we will see, we will have the noise. And this time around, let's say, I think turbulent noise, the 3D one. So we have different colors to work with. So again, as per usual, you might already have known this. Now we have created, or whoops, my bad, written the CD by connecting these dots to CD. But what if you don't? What if previously you had another color or texture map, and you don't want to pollute your viewport with this kind of like visualization, right? But you still want to have your attribute. So actually, without doing anything, we can bind the attribute. This will bind export and bind attribute. So this one references the attribute, the previously created one, and the bind export writes them. So we are going to, let's say, we will get the red channel, vector to floats. We will get the results of the red channel, like here, 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 and we will extrude it. Let's see, again, noise into vector, and the red, which is a float value 1, we get into the inputs of the parameter, and with parameter, we will call it red channel. Again, you don't need to actually call it red channel, but for the purpose of the, you know, keeping it very, very clear for this tutorial, we will do just that. Now, as a final thing, I don't want to convert it. You know what? Actually, let's attribute promotes. Just to, you know, get a little exercise once more. However, we now have the red channel floats, so the original name will be red channel. It's a point, and we will convert it into primitive. We don't see it if we disconnect the CD, right? We will not see it, but it will be there, and you can see it in the geometry spreadsheet. As you can see, the red channel does indeed exist on each and every of our piece of geometry. And if we now poly extrude, again, we promote it from point to primitive for poly extrude to work. Distance will be 1, local control, and now we write red channel. And if we do the individual elements, you will immediately see that we do indeed have our attribute written, working, and extruding things as we would, well, imagine. Increase the roughness a little bit, or decrease the attribute amplitude, well, basic works with noises that we will talk about a bit later. Let's write new normals so it looks okay in the render, and there you go. So as per usual, my general kind of like suggestion would be to, let's see, okay, I want to enable this one. I want it to be colorized. My usual suggestion would be to actually go out there, work through this tutorial, understand how it works. If you don't get it, like if you just watch the video and you don't like work your way through the video with the given examples, this might be harder for you to kind of remember how it all works. So do the exercises, please, so it stays with you and you will be able to manipulate attributes in no time. And yeah, hopefully this was helpful. If you like what you see, press the like button. If you don't want to miss anything else, press subscribe button. Also, I tried to read all the comments in the comment section, so don't hesitate to share your ideas or questions. Again, that was Arise.Works. I hope you will be having a nice day, and I really hope to see you next videos. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.